Howdy everyone, it's me once again, the one and only Killer Dan. And today, as you can see, I'm still continuing my Disney movie marathon where I'll be talking about their movies, TV shows, merchandising, I don't know. If it's related to Disney in any shape or form, then yes, I'll be talking about it. So here we are. So I'm doing a follow-up with all this video thing I've been doing, folks, and just responding to the podcast, of course. And yes, of course, it's ridiculous. This is part two. It goes into this Christian podcast, talking about Disney movies, of course, especially Cruella the Villain. Well, one of the live action versions, anyway. And like I said before, it's not very good. It's awful. And yes, it's just, no, it's not very good at all. It's definitely one of the worst I've seen. And I've seen this in Disney Plus, by the way, just so you know. But the thing is that I just want to say real quick before we proceed here is that, ugh, yeah, I was of course attempting to finish this video up. This was supposed to have been released a long while ago, so it was just pretty much lollygagging in some ways. And yeah, I just finally got to this part two. I'm gonna have to do a part three, by the way, because this is taking quite a while to just wrap it up, folks. Just so you know. But anyway, moreover, that these Christians keep thinking that somehow this movie started the whole dark trend when it comes to live action movies, which is a complete and utter lie. Disney had dark moments before, and Disney had made, well, the directors, I mean, have produced dark movies before, so I have no idea as to why or how or what made them think that this started that trend or whatnot. Yeah, but like I said, folks, the second part was supposed to have been uploaded a long time ago, so it's just taking me a while. So with that being said, let's just continue, I guess. And the writing and all that jazz, and what makes the movie good. But this movie does remind me of the Joker in some ways because both characters are basically outcasts, really, except one basically just embraces it and smiles by it, and the other one just is all depressed and everything. Because, oh no, society has brought me down. How dare everybody hate me? I'm so different and unique, but it's everyone else that's a complete asshole toward me. I'm the one that's being oppressed here. I'm the one needs to be recognized as a good person, yada, yada, yada. I'm not nutty. I'm not crazy. It's everyone else that's crazy. It's like they're trying to be like, not hold themselves accountable, really. I mean, of course, Cruella is not as violent as gore as the Joker, of course, but that's besides the point. But one of the major problems, whereas the Joker is supposed to be a villain, but whereas Cruella, she's supposed to be looked up as a heroine, even though it's more or less the same kind of vein, kind of storytelling. So it's kind of conflict in tone in some ways. She in the original films and in the remake from '96, even then she's portrayed as a villain. In this movie, she's it's supposed to be a prequel. I mean, eventually got a sequel too, but still. But she's supposed to be like this kind of good person, as because she's a woman, and that's about it. I mean, the joke is it's not a good movie either. The joke is not a good movie either. It's just it's terrible. So this, but again, aside from the quality of that movie, it just reminds me it's in the same kind of way in that regard. So both are dark, both are gloomy in some ways, but okay. And this podcast is trying to act as if Disney never did it before when it comes to gloomy stuff. What? Okay, let's just get into it, I guess. Whatever.
Born with it. And it sort of illustrates a little bit of her own character. She's sort of split between two personalities.
What do you mean she's sort of split into two personalities? When that was ever a thing? How is it kinda? How is it? What do you mean sort of? That's really vague. And of course, get into a bunch of random stuff here that doesn't have anything to do with anything. But okay, go ahead. And also, Corella's mother wasn't exactly super nice either, so I don't know where you got that from exactly. And at some point, she was pretty much abandoned, a daughter Cruella. And yes, she was pretty much an orphan, so she was somehow living on the streets in this abandoned place. And somehow nobody noticed this. Unfortunately, yes, I don't know where they're getting this from. That her mother's like the nicest person ever. When, like, what? No.
As she's growing up, her mom is the nicest person around, really tries to guide her daughter.
So what? She can be the nicest person in the entire damn universe, and the child could still go astray. This happens. So, okay, again, what does any of this have to do with anything? You're not explaining anything. Again.
Two positive directions. And
And we
her
know where
name,
that's going to go.
her name is actually Estella. And when she behaves the way that her mom thinks that she should, that's pretty much who she is.
How is having a nickname for yourself mean you have two personalities? What are you talking about? Are you implying that she has some kind of personality disorder in some kind of shape or form? Which, yes, does happen to people in real life, but it could vary from person to person. You can't just have a broad stroke for a lot of these kinds of things. It could vary. So, again, what are you talking about? This doesn't make sense.
But when she goes bad, when
And what are you talking about? She was bad from the get go. It was never like one time she was, oh, so sweet and cute, oh. Then she just snapped on whatever. That never happened, like at all. So what movie are you talking about here?
it's like when she is good, she is very, very good, although she's not really very good.
What are you talking about? She was always bad from the very beginning. Not one point she was like, oh, I'm good, then suddenly bad. No.
When she's bad, she is horrible. That's when she becomes Cruella.
So she's kind of like
Again, when did this happen? What are you talking about? This never occurred ever in the film. It's always like
Gollum
this.
then.
She is kind of like Gollum. Actually, that's a pretty good comparison.
I mean, yeah, because
So-
Smeagol isn't always that nice.
Early on in the movie, she's actually orphaned. Her mom takes a tumble.
Oh yes, they just compared her to the one character from the Lord of the Rings movies because somehow they're two in the same. I mean, okay, that character definitely does have a personality disorder, whereas the other one doesn't.
Off of a cliff because of these terrible Dalmatians. She's orphaned. She goes to London and she gets mixed up with these two petty, pint-sized thieves called Horace and Jasper. And that, so she does all these little petty crimes, but all the time she wants to be a designer. And sort of that goes into the rest of the movie.
You used a great word in your review to describe them. Drifter? No.
Grifters.
Grifter.
Grifters.
I didn't even know what a grifter was, but I knew that it wasn't good.
This is so cringe. It's so cringe. This entire thing is just awful. This whole podcast is just dumb. Nothing is explained again. So funny. No, really. What's so funny? What's the joke? Yeah, well, whatever.
So, I'm a parent. I think, oh, I kind of liked it.
And what does any of that have to do with anything? Stop jumping around the topic.
101 Dalmatians. We're going to pack up the kids and take them to the Cineplex. Yay, nay, somewhere in between.
If you're going to be just dancing around the subject matter, which technically you are, I'd much rather be watching this. Actual dancing. Because at least there's some actual required talent. It's choreographed. Everything seems organized. Unlike this podcast manager, because it's all over the place. You can tell that this was obviously rehearsed. They had a discussion on what to do on stage. They picked a song. They picked the outfit, the type of wardrobe, a color scheme. And like there's like so many things that go into this. It may look simple and whatnot on the outside when everything's done, but there's like so much here that goes into the production. Again, unlike this podcast, it just seems like you just made it up on the fly as you go, and you can so tell. There's no coherent thought in anything.
I'd say nay.
You'd
Honestly,
say nay.
because the movie goes into some very. It is a dark movie.
What are you talking about? You haven't discussed anything. You literally discussed nothing. Zip, zilch. It's dark, 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 dark. Dark, 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 dark. That's all I'm hearing. Dark, dark. What makes it dark? How? In which way? What specifically did the movie do that made it dark? How? How did he do that exactly?
Feels a little bit Tim Burton-esque to me. It
That doesn't answer anything. What you're referring to is the style of the movie, the overall style of it. That doesn't explain anything. Okay, it has a gloomy feel to it, sure, but that's about it.
looks really cool. The fashion is cool. The visuals are very, very nice. And it has some tremendous actors, obviously, attached to it. Emma Stone is great. Emma Thompson is wonderful as sort of this secondary villain called the Baroness. She's just fantastic. But the movie has never made being bad look so good.
You're not explaining anything. Like, for example, like I was saying earlier, she was pretty much an orphan. How in the hell was she able to survive despite being a child? No parental guidance, nothing. She had no one to help her at all when she was a kid. Okay, it doesn't bother me that if all the people in the film were villains, if you're gonna do such a story, sure, be my guest. It just depends on how it's done, of course. Well, there's quite a bit of stuff that was never explained in the film. And if you want to do it like everyone's the bad guy, sure. Everybody doesn't like everybody. No one's agreeing on everyone. No. So basically, having everybody fighting everybody. Just because you're a bad person does not necessarily mean you're going to agree with the other bad person, which does make it realistic when you think about it. That makes it plausible because in real life, not every criminal is going to like the other criminal. So there's been times where the criminals fought each other in real life. That has happened multiple times. So they could have done that here. It seems like a missed opportunity when you think about it. So anyway, so, so how is it that, again, like I was saying a moment ago, how was she able to survive on her own when she was a child? She was just a little kid. Yes, somehow she survived until her teens and 20s or whatever. How does that make sense? It was never explained, ever. There's so many plot holes in this movie. And what was the point of her changing the color of her hair? I know it was meant to like be disguised, but what's the point of that? And she had an ego thing. Are you trying to tell me that that's why she was bad? I don't get it. And how was she able to make this dress, this boring dress thing? And also, how did she get the materials? And was this supposed to be disguised? How did nobody recognize her? Like literally nobody. What? Okay, I know I've said this before, but it bears repeating just to give an example as to what I'm talking about here. Yeah, these two characters here in the background, yeah, in the original film and in the live action remake that came out in '96, she pretty much saw them as nothing more than just meat bags. Not say she doesn't care if they survive. So why in the live action prequel, why is it that she trying to make this movie trying to make it seem like they're friends? That doesn't make any sense. Now is she supposed to care for them, even though in the other movies she doesn't? Like what happened here? Were they supposed to be friends at first that break apart? This kind of stuff was never explained. This is considered as a plot hole. What happened here? Were they like former friends or something? Did something happen between the two? Okay, it's three, I guess, in this case, but still. Like, what? Again, context is key. There's a lot of stuff that's been glanced over here when you think about it. And then, of course, the other thing is that, of course, the movie is going to attempt to make the rich, the wealthy, like they're nothing more than scumbags. And like an other sort of movie did, yeah, this seems familiar. Ugh. And that is something that doesn't make a whole lot of sense either because you're poor, just because you're struggling, the rich and the wealthy shouldn't be obligated to give you money. I mean, if it's volunteer, then sure, of course, but no one should be forced to give anybody money, is what I'm trying to say here. If the shoe was on the other foot, then they would be complaining. Oh, how dare you try to make me do things against my will? Nah, 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 and all that jazz. It doesn't make any sense, like at all. That is so dumb. It's like how a dentist shouldn't be forced to work on your teeth just because you can't afford it. That doesn't make sense.
Right?
Literally,
It-
the fashion.
Exactly. So when you're talking about impressionable kids, who are still trying to figure out how to be good and how to be cool, bad looks really cool in this. And so I
Somebody please think of the children. Please, for the love of all things holy, think, think of the children. Shut up. Oh boy. So we're using this argument again. Okay. So the film is not glorifying evil. Okay, that's not what it's doing. It's not trying to say, oh yeah, being evil is great. If anything, it's sloppy writing. Yes, she's a psychotic character, but they're trying to pin her as the hero, heroine, I should say.
I think it could be one of those things that if a parent does decide to take their children to this movie, they're going to need to talk about it quite a bit, I think.
Well, I feel like I've seen a couple of movies over the years. I feel like this trend kind of started when they did the live action remake of Cinderella and they had Kate Blanchett playing Lady Tremaine, and she was just, oh, she was so good. And she remaking that classic.
Again, it's not a remake; it's a prequel. And your people are so soft. This is too threatening. Come on. Oh no! Don't show them the puppy because this puppy might be too gloomy. Get that off the screen. Hurry.
Character, that classic villain, and she was so good in it that I think people were intrigued by her performance and they were like, I want to see the backstory of more Disney villains. And then, we had Maleficent.
Queen Elsa was originally supposed to have been a villain, and I don't see any of you saying that that should have been a movie. I wouldn't mind seeing her as a superheroine, though, in those comic book films. Seems fitting when you think about it. Anyway.
And, she was played by Angelina Jolie, and again, phenomenal performance. But, the difference, I think, between the Maleficent movies and maybe these movies, Cruella and Cinderella, is that we're dealing with her, it was almost a little more, her actions were a little more justified, not correct. I'm not, saying that what she did was right, but I am saying that, that it painted her in a softer light. And
again, it just goes to bad writing. Disney was being incompetent. Look at the directors, not Disney itself, really. They just hired the people. Anyway, it's just the script writer was being incompetent. The script writer was being incompetent. Like, we're supposed to be rooting for the character, and that's it. Why her of all the characters could have chosen from? I don't know. But you still got it wrong.
Could see how she became the evil villain that she was in Sleeping Beauty.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that one of the interesting things about sort of weighing between Cruella and Maleficent is that Maleficent, you see part of her backstory. Mm-hmm. But in the midst of that backstory, she's sort of redeemed. You can see not only how she got to be that way, but she turns better as the movie goes along.
I was going to say, yeah, she, in the end, it ends up being like her being.
What I'm trying to say here is that whoever directed this film and whoever the scriptwriter was, it's in conflict in tone, is what I'm trying to say. Of all the characters they were chosen from, they chose a crazy person to pretty much idolize, really. The movie is not trying to say it's cool to be evil. That's not what the film is saying. Of course, it's wrong to be bad, of course. But, again, it's just sloppy writing at the end of the day, like I just said a moment ago.
The one who has to forgive, who has to be the bigger person and such, which is kind of a unique twist.
Exactly.
It's like, hey, even though I was actually pretty bad, I'm going to do the right thing now.
Did we see the same movie? That never happened. Like, at all. That literally never happened. At all.
Exactly. It has sort of this core moral message that really did redeem her character. Cruella in this, you understand her, but she never is redeemed. She is.
So what? Not every villain needs to be redeemed. You just think of this in a really the most overly simplistic way.
Still a very, very bad person. And one of the things that struck me actually in the movie is that toward the end you hear the Rolling Stones' Sympathy for the Devil play. And it really does feel like the movie asks us to feel sympathy for Cruella de Vil.
Well, it's
what they could have done is make the character be an angry woman. Being angry in itself is not necessarily bad, really. It's what you do with that anger that could determine being bad or good, or maybe somewhere in the middle. Again, they just chose the wrong character to pretty much be the main character, to be like a super nice person, but it's just being pressured by society when you think about it. They chose the wrong character.
just interesting, and it might be a good discussion if you took your teenagers. But I think go back to Adam's question is, do you pack up the kids? And by kids, do you mean the 5-year-old, the 8-year-old, the 6-year-old? It's probably not in the same way. Would you pack up the kids to go see, Joaquin Phoenix playing Joker? Sure, we as Batman fans might like and appreciate. Here's why Joker is the way he is.
Yeah, that's one of my many problems I have with this film is that they over-explained a lot of stuff. Just like how in Rob Zombie's remake of Halloween, like he was being picked on, therefore he was evil. Okay, and then compare this to The Dark Knight. This was much better because it's a bit of a mystery as to what made him bad.
Because of this, and I don't think Joker's really redeeming. You don't find out that he turned out to be a good guy at the end. It's kind of an explanation of the character. So you almost have to expect that a little bit, and you probably need to be prepared for that. And maybe it's
Again, I keep repeating myself here. This film is not saying it's good to be bad. That's not what the film is saying. Out of all the things you got from the movie, it's not saying, yeah, be a bad person. It's not telling the kids to be a bad person. Join the dark side, like it was Star Wars or something.
for older kids and not for younger kids. Maybe we need to understand that.
The Joker is actually kind of a good comparison in some ways, because I think that when you look at Cruella and how it sort of develops as the movie, that's kind of exactly what we're talking about. Yes, you understand how the character got to where she gets to.
Again, did we see the same movie? She was always an asshole since the very, very, very beginning.
You do understand a little bit more about her, and you feel some sympathy for what she's been through and how she deals with some of the things she does. But it makes what she does, it's really bad, and it sort of excuses it, and that's not
We're
necessarily.
invited almost to laugh at it.
We are. And I think that when you're talking about a movie that's targeted toward children, there is an inherent problem with that.
And with our teenagers, I think that could be a fascinating discussion because
Again, these individuals just keep hammering in. They believe that this film is sending the message, hey, little kids, act like a bunch of bastards and steal, cheat, and all that. That's not what the movie's doing. It's not trying to encourage bad things. It's not doing that at all whatsoever.
empathize with a character and step into their shoes and find out why are they doing what they're doing. Life isn't always full of fairy tale endings, and life isn't, full of people turning out necessarily good in the end.
Well, that's true, but the problem with a lot of you Christians, you think in this really overly simplistic point of view. Life itself is not so black and white. It's not so simplistic, but a lot of you Christians think in a really simplistic type of way.
And to look at how a character got that way, sadly, sometimes the world will walk away and be like, oh, well, now that we've empathized with them, it's okay. Good for you. Be that way. Well, no, we don't need to make that leap. And those might be good conversations to have.
Well, and I think this is a movie that really, in some ways, romanticizes revenge. And I mean, there's an entire genre of revenge movies, and revenge movies invite us to look forward to the bad guy or bad girl getting his or hers. And because they're bad, we're supposed to look.
Yeah, there were plenty of Christians out there who were actually arrested for doing horrible stuff, of course. And there's plenty of other Christians as well that have these conspiracy theories. And yes, I've spoken about a lot of conspiracy theories from the religious folks before. And yeah, there's a lot. They seem to really hate the Democrats, of course. A lot of this is just fear mongering, obviously. If I really want to oversimplify it, yes, a lot of it is fear mongering, of course. Yeah, being paranoid and being religious is not a good mix. But what I'm trying to get at is that in this podcast, they're again dancing around the subject. They're dancing around the subject. The film Cruella is not trying to support the idea that, hey, it's okay to be bad, little Jimmy. Hey, little Jimmy, be a little bastard and steal candy from the corner store. Because this movie says, okay, Disney is okay with stealing and whatnot. This movie's not doing that. It's a bad movie, yes, but still.
Past the fact that somebody is pursuing vengeance. But obviously Scripture has things to say about not pursuing vengeance. But but just giving into that hate, I'm going to resist quoting Star Wars here. In general, giving into your hatred in pursuit of vengeance does bad things to your soul. And I think that this movie,
Whether souls exist or not is another subject matter because that's a whole debate on its own. But this entire conversation is incredibly vague. Like, what does that mean exactly? Like, what? Like your behavior will kind of reflect on your soul somehow? I don't get any of this. It's just confusing.
doesn't really dig into that in a way. I kept waiting for something a little deeper. Like I wanted something a little bit existential. I wanted somebody to wink at me as an adult viewer that says, yeah, she's making bad choices here, but she's aware of it.
Okay, how do you say that I don't know how to read body language without even saying it? There you go. You don't have no social cues or anything. But that would require the movie to over explain everything. I mean, yes, the movie does have bad writing, it does, but that's besides the point. So you want the film to literally wink, 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 wink. Oh yeah, she's aware of what she's doing. Of course, she's aware of what she's doing. She's not naive enough to be thinking that what she's doing is good, but is really bad. So again, what are you talking about? This is so stupid. All right, folks. Like I said earlier, way earlier, I'll have part three of this uploaded when I have the chance. It's just taking me a good while just to complete this entire thing. And it's just like a whole lot to speak about, even though at the end of the day it's nothing. Really, it's a nothing sandwich at all. So they were trying to act as if like this movie is trying to glorify being bad, like being bad is being good and whatnot. So I don't understand how they gain this perspective here. I mean, yes, when it comes to some content, yes, of course, you should be careful who's going to watch this, obviously. I mean, don't get this twisted, folks. I am by no means attempting to defend this film because it's terrible. But it's not Disney's responsibility to babysit your kids. They are not their parents. You are their parents. You are their guardian. You're supposed to make sure not every single Disney film is intended for kindergartners. And that's how they're coming off. Like these Christian individuals are assuming like every single thing that Disney have produced, whether it's TV shows, video games, books, whatever you want to call it, all of it is just intended just for kindergartners, which, when you think of it, is a bad business tactic. I mean, you want to target the family, sure, but you just have one specific age group is not really going to help, especially when you have a big corporation like Disney. Of course, you're going to want to appeal to as many ages as humanly possible. So you can't exactly show them something that's PG 13. I mean, you can't even show something that's PG to kindergartners, like at all. So just a lot of this is quite questionable on their end. They're just assuming a lot of stuff that doesn't even make any sense whatsoever once you apply logic to a lot of this. Because, like I said earlier, it's just a whole lot of nothing. It's literally nothing. It's a nothing sandwich when you think about it. Because there's this, all this is just on assumptions that this is like too dark for some kids, like maybe too gloomy, maybe it's too violent, and maybe for kindergartners, maybe it's too gloomy for kindergartners, maybe. But I wouldn't really have an issue with, let's say, like a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, or a 13-year-old, a 12-year-old, whatever, seeing this. That seems about the age group that this movie could be intended for, and I don't have an issue with that per se, really. Because around that age, you become more aware of the world around you. You become aware that there's other people than your friends and family out there. You become more aware that other people exist, different kinds of situations. Once you enter middle school and high school, of course, your perspective of life is going to be pretty much different than compared to when you were maybe 8, 9, or whatever. Even then, you could become more aware, I guess. Anyway, just whatever. I will do a part three and upload it when I have the chance. So until next time, I guess. See ya. Oh yeah, later.